Well, hello everybody. Thanks for joining me for the collection of my pre-Dreamforce thoughts before the whole craziness, tohu vabohu, however you want to call it, starts in San Francisco this week. Let me talk about some of the things I've been thinking about recently, and I've seen it's also mentioned in my coverage. So everything I refer to is on my blog post actually at Enterprise Software Musings. Holger Mueller, just Google it. So. The most interesting thing, of course, is as we head to Dreamforce, is what will be the new key messaging here, right? Every year, Mark Benioff, great marketeer, great CEO of a company, comes up with some new messaging. I've been critical, maybe too often, changing the messaging. Last year, it was about the customer success platform. I would be very excited if it stays about customer success platform, because to build software along these lines takes a long time. We see many of these things which have come to fruition recently at Salesforce are more than a year old and come from longer time ago than the messaging of customer success platform. We had e-business, social business. We had all kinds of different messaging. So I'm really curious what's going to be. My money is so it's going to change. Most likely, we saw the connected toothbrush, or Mark shared his toothbrush, which was 1 or 2 years ago even. By now we have more toothbrushes out there than, or more smartphones out there than toothbrushes. So this could be a hint to something in the IoT area, but we'll see. So stay tuned for that. So then from the general parts, right, the major announcement pre-announced is the App Cloud. Salesforce bringing together their platforms on the force.com side and on Heroku, which runs, not mentioned often by them, on the AWS platform. So it's the first multi-cloud cross-pass offering with security, private zones, single sign-on, that we know that you can deploy right away from vendor. Yes, there's many others. People told me they can deploy to different platforms, but you build on one, you deploy on others. This is the first cross-platform piece. It's going to be interesting to look at. And then we have many things happening, right? Last year, Salesforce announced Lightning. It will be interesting to see what's happening with Lightning. Got a little more quiet around Shield. Shield was an equal announcement on the PaaS platform and the service side. So really curious to look and see what's happening there. Now, of course, Salesforce is also a player in the future of work, as we call it, and that is mainly covered on the Chatter platform. So it's going to be interesting if they will be doing some new things around Chatter and innovation in that area. And on top of that, Salesforce also announced Salesforce for HR, right? Use the force.com and now probably the Heroku platform to build next generation HR applications. An interesting, surprising announcement from spring. And next up, of course, is the whole Wave and analytics area. Salesforce has done a very good job visualizing very compelling analytics. My definition, they're not analytics. Analytics, in my definition, as you can read in my blog, are things which do something and which do a recommendation. Analytics only visualizes, and it's not close enough to real time because hourly updates right now. But that could be changing, so we'll hear the announcements for that coming at this Dreamforce. And then it's going to be interesting to see Salesforce is a huge ecosystem. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to speak to a number of ISVs. Amongst them are in the HR area, Lumes and Financial First, building things for HR. And HR is specifically tricky things around time, data, signing of documents and records, which are tricky in the Salesforce platform. So it's going to be interesting how they make progress in that area. It's going to be interesting to walk the show floor anyway, who's there and being part of the Salesforce ecosystem. I mentioned the messaging thing. One of the things which could be interesting if it goes into the IoT area is that there's actually no real-time piece. I mentioned that on the Wave side. And there's no big data part. And doing IoT or doing any modern application development without a Hadoop and big data store is going to be hard. So we'll see if anything in that area is going to happen. And last but not least, I put my head out there, not so much to the liking of Salesforce, saying that Salesforce is a very successful vendor. It's the leading SaaS platform revenue-wise. But the platform is getting old. It's, one could say, conceptualized in 1999. They've been doing lots of things about modernizing and keeping it going, but a lot of work has to happen. They have to think about the next generation platform. No one likes to publicly talk about replatforming. Maybe at this point, we're going to hear about a roadmap, an announcement around this. Maybe we're going to hear about new capabilities coming to the platform. At some point, Salesforce will have to bite the bullet on this one. If it's going to be this Dreamforce, I don't know. That's speculation. Last but not least, Constellation will be out there in force. My colleague on Future of Work, Al Lepofsky, is going to have a presentation. Don't miss it. I think it's going to be on Wednesday. My colleague Dr. Natalie is going to be there looking at CRM and engagement pieces. My colleague Doug Henshin is going to be there looking at the BI, big data, analytics story. And of course, Ray, who's looking at all the things there. So I'll be there sooner than this week than you might think. But follow me on Twitter to see where I have to go before. So that's it. A little longer than I thought, as usual. See you at Dreamforce 2015 in San Francisco. Make sure you step by and say hello.
Live from the connecting flights in the lounge in Frankfurt. Reached the news that Salesforce has announced their new development on their Wave platform, which is their analytics platform. Let's walk you through the news on that part. We can take a glass half full, half empty perspective from it. I'll talk about that towards the end of this. But the real key thing which Salesforce is stressing is integrating actions with the insight. This has been the holy dream of business intelligence analytics, call it what you want, that there's always been a separate area for business users between the transactional part and the analytical part. So Salesforce now bringing that closer to the user by integrating the visualization, which is a good thing. One of the things to flag you to analysis by users and visualization is different data of different visualization, so that's a good news. It's also ending some of the embedded business vendors business to some point on the visualization side, so we'll see how that pans out. But overall, it's good news that you can build your own actions. There's some pre-built actions, and it's also coming to the area where people build more software because the actions will be specific to each enterprise of doing that. So overall, a good half glass full for Salesforce users because it brings you closer to getting the same unified interface and taking action on the data. That is attractive is shown by ISV adoption. That's always important to understand. Salesforce is not only an applications vendor, but also a platform vendor. And on these platforms, in the press release, which came out a few hours ago, there's references to 4 vendors. So there's reference to Aptus, doing quote-to-cash intelligence, to Financial First, adopting ERP for Wave apps, Steelbricks on the analytics side, and Velocity on the communication side. So that's good news to see that it comes right out. It's good endorsement by the ISVs on the platform. And in general, like I said, probably very good value for existing Salesforce customers. On the glass half full part here, demonstrating that visually here, is that Wave is not a real-time platform. It's only updated every hour or so, which flip side is good for users who get information much longer part. I hope that the insights will have some alert mechanism. I can guess that we'll do that. And then Salesforce so far, we'll see what announcements will come. The Dreamforce doesn't have a big data story. And a lot of business relevant data right now, lots of context, lots of basic data in the IoT space and so on comes out of the business data, so out of the Hadoop data. And that will be interesting to see if Salesforce has any announcement in that area in place. Otherwise, it's kind of like, yes, great value for Salesforce users, existing users, different story overall to get the full picture, both from a real-time perspective, what's really happening right now, and from a complete view on the data perspective. But hey, what hasn't happened can only come in the future if it comes. So stay tuned. Look forward to more updates from Dreamforce in general. Thanks for listening and watching, and see you soon.
Well, everybody, thanks for joining me for a quick update on Salesforce IoT Cloud. I wrote a blog post, which I'll refer to the blog post where I embed this video. Learn a little more about from Adam Bosworth, who's in charge of that in regards of the technologies being used, making Salesforce IoT Cloud happen. And let's talk about it first, and let's talk about then about how ASC is going. So it's using a number of open source technologies, which in my view is a good sign. Also, basically can't build many things exclusively themselves or community development approach everybody's using and leveraging that. So it's a significant challenge to get that done. And I'm having echo right now. Let me turn this off here. Hopefully the audio is good. I'm calling in from Italy. So the good news is they're using open source with Kafka, Cassandra, and a lot of Spark, and that's the whole setup. And the working works basically that Events are being monitored by Kafka. Kafka, to everybody to the mind, is the LinkedIn. Yeah, it's a LinkedIn open source originally a piece of listening and monitoring. So Kafka looks at this, and then it uses Spark, very similar to other IoT vendors, to take profile data from the Kafka piece and put it into a Cassandra database for later profile updates of what is happening with the thing. Interesting choice of Cassandra. You might talk about that in another video. And then they take use Storm, the Twitter originally open source founded stream analysis, to take data from Kafka 2 and write logic to handle the real events, which are the ones which are being built on the Salesforce App Cloud platform right now. And all of this runs supposedly in Heroku. That's where my questions start. Heroku runs on AWS. Salesforce usually is pretty coy about saying where things run, right? Force.com, pretty much in Oracle, Heroku, all the way in AWS. So if this whole thing runs on AWS, which I can't get confirmation on yet, it's actually pretty good news in the sense for AWS, but that's a scalable IoT platform by itself. And the biggest concern I have is it sounds like very much like the architecture that Salesforce promoted and introduced last year for the Wave platform, where you have to listen and then move events and move data into it because it's aggregated information. So very different architecture needed for a data warehousing, close to real time, pseudo analytics platform going on then for an IoT platform, because in IoT you have all these massive volumes of data and you want to move the code close to the data. So technologies like you hear from AWS Lambda, sitting on the data, basically BAM, business activity monitoring, or real-time processing event part, look to me a little more successful for handling all this information. So a little update on this, more than I knew yesterday when I wrote the blog post. Hope this was useful. I'll dig down more at Dreamforce this week. Stay tuned. Look forward to speak to you.
Well, hello everybody. Thanks for joining me for a event report from Salesforce Dreamforce 2015. As you can see, I'm still in San Francisco, sitting on Howard Street, where normally the cars drive along, and trying to record this under quite challenging conditions. First of all, bright lights, right? I keep my eyes open as I will try. Secondly, I'm using the Dreamforce Wi-Fi, and thirdly, there's some wind coming up and later. So I hope the audio is really good. I'll try my best to work really hard on these things. So let's look at the top takeaways of this Dreamforce, which has been filled and busy 4 days with lots of events. I think 20 plus keynotes, every day multiple keynotes. The whole idea of the keynote has been made obsolete at Dreamforce because there's not keynotes, there's notes like major presentations the whole time going on. So the good news for us analysts was none of the keynotes really unveiled much really new things. I know we have the wind, so really hope Google Hangouts and YouTube's going to do the magic on the audio here. So I think overall the biggest thing for Salesforce customers is going to be the new Lightning UI, right? I've been criticizing Salesforce for quite some time for their more than pedestrian UI. Lots of scroll intensive, all the things you don't want to do. You want the eyes work and not the hands and the mouse work. So Lightning is a much more better, Lightning user experience, UI is a much more better user experience than that. It's 21st century, it looks lightweight, uses HTML5, a significant progress using slider controls from left, right, consistent look and feel across devices, so major step. It's all coming in winter, and to give me the scope and breadth of Salesforce, I'm going to come to everything, but it's just going to come to the Sales Cloud predominantly at the beginning. New things like Analytics Cloud are built in Lightning Experience right away. Lightning Experience correct maybe right away. The second most important thing probably is on the Lightning whole product family side, everything around end user enablement. So I'll share on my blog, which I'll write later, a picture where end users are building their first apps. And that's really powerful. My view will disrupt much of software as we know it, as we enable end users to build their own applications. This has happened already in the mobile space, where lots of developers were building mobile applications for themselves, by themselves, and that market is kind of like gone with easy declarative tools like Lightning, Salesforce, and other vendors. So that's the biggest impact overall. Now on the technology looking forward, from a developer perspective, The Salesforce App Cloud is really the key announcement here, where Salesforce really brings together the two things that were more than separate in the past between building things on top of Force.com and building things on top of Heroku. And that with a security mind aspect, being able to have your own customer keys, making sure that all these concerns in Europe and other places around security and the US Patriot Act and so are concerned. So that's a major step. And being able to deploy my Heroku applications on different cloud infrastructures, locations, is a very powerful thing. So the first multi-cloud path to deliver consistent applications across. So nobody gets it wrong. You could build applications across clouds and do things by hand around single sign-on, user controls, security, time it's being integrated. It will be very interesting to see. I don't think it's going to happen, but it will be very interesting to see if Salesforce is going to push that beyond Heroku, which runs on top of AWS, by the way. So next one was the IoT Cloud. I asked in a Q&A with Parker Harris and the head of development, Jean, I believe is the name for a gentleman from France, if it's not a misnomer, because the first false cloud effectively coming from Salesforce, right? All the other clouds, Sales Cloud, you can do sales in it. Marketing Cloud, you can do marketing in it, right? Apps Cloud, you can build apps on it. The IoT Cloud, you can't run IoT on top of it, right? Of course, I didn't like the comment for Salesforce doing a false cloud, but it's really an integration effort between the massive data on the IoT side, making that available for Salesforce users. And Parker Harris, good enough, given context for that, defended that, of course, it's not just listening to it, it's also creating profiles and then the actions and rules in that. And I agree, the rules editor is pretty nice on top of that, but I still can't run IoT on top of the Salesforce IoT Cloud. This is very different to all the other clouds in Salesforce. So sorry, Salesforce, you might not like it, but it's really false cloud. But it does a good job for itself. For Salesforce customers, it's of huge value, being able to make sense of IoT events and what they're using application-wise. But from a technology perspective, less than I would have hoped it could be. And Salesforce really needs a overall Hadoop strategy to be really a player to build native IoT applications. The interesting thing is how to be able to create actions there and make sense of that, but it's probably also the wrong perspective on doing IoT because of data gravity. So much data is there moving. The OVs of big data apply here for IoT. You probably have to move the code to the data, have to move more of the business content, because most actions in IoT have to happen on a programmatic level, and you don't want to have an extraction making sense of it. The remarkable thing is that for the first time, Salesforce has opened how much open source they're using. They used open source in the past, but this whole using Kafka, using Storm, using Spark, is, I think, another sign that open source is really the platform to go, like everybody else. And I wish the Salesforce would be a little more aggressive. Important also, all of Thunder, the technology, and the Salesforce IoT Cloud runs on top of AWS. So customers have the choice also when the data is in AWS anyway to look at other alternatives for running on top of IoT and then just potentially call Salesforce APIs. So not too convinced in what they've done. Lots of respect for, I think 40 billion events can be parsed in a day through the technology. That's pretty impressive, but still better. Second wave, better customers coming. So interesting aspects on an IT cloud. Analytics cloud, some progress, better visualization, better UI, bringing together all the analytics pieces with reporting. It's a separate license, which I think for a software vendor makes sense as additional value. It's really not analytics, it's visualization. For that, it works really well. It's not close to real time. It's usually daily, which for most business users is actually enough. So it creates value and addresses the also relatively getting old reporting capabilities on site on the Salesforce side and bringing analytics closer to the actions with very similar rule-based capabilities like you see on the IoT side. That's the major takeaways. On the tidbit side, I mean, I mentioned the Lightning UI already. Also massive effort on the Trailhead side, right? To attract developers, you have to help them how to do things and how to create things. So that's a key aspect in that. So very good to see significant know-how, dispersion, learning, touching things, getting to things on Trailhead. All of Moscone West on the developer floor was set up like a national park as people embark in their journey to go on the trail with Salesforce, with Heroku, and with Force.com. Nothing really on the future of work as last fought here. Salesforce acquired, now name escapes me, this is all live. Toronto-based went on that, was all effort. Then this year it launched for Salesforce for HR. Didn't have a chance to play up on this, so I'll try to do that in follow-up.
overall, my point of view, good progress by Salesforce, creating value for their customers. If it's enough for them to be key for next generation application scenarios around social listening, just call it IoT Cloud, but social listening has to happen too. There's different tools there, but customers might do it themselves. Or on the IoT side, a little skeptical on that part. But hey, the glass can always be half full and half empty. I'm very positive on the UI piece of Lightning that really brings the user experience for Salesforce users positive. So that's ending on a positive note, my event report from Salesforce, the Dreamforce 2015. Thanks for watching and listening. This has been much, much longer than it should be. And I really, really hope that the audio is decent and good enough despite wind and a thrifty Dreamforce network. Thanks for watching. Speak to you soon. See you soon.